Yeah. Oh, we're back and we have chat.
Don't worry. I hope
We're live and we have
thought
chat.
we had chat the last time and we were.
Yeah, I don't know. It seems to just do that whenever we start it up for some reason.
Okay. Well, unfinished project. Clancy, what's happening, brother man? You're gonna wear out those like 5 digits on your keyboard.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Dickie Farley, what's happening? Muck Warts. George Bunny. I thought you were going to be the first one. Were you the first one in on the last one?
He's saying we got chat but no video. Are you guys having a video problem? You got no video?
I don't know. Everybody else seems to no
sound.
Dickie Farley says we got no sound. Oh God. Okay. Does anybody have sound? Can anybody see us?
Yeah, it's showing that the
Dickie Farley says there's no sound. Yeah.
Oh man.
Right here, we're good now. Okay, so some of you guys have sound, and some of you don't. Okay, so Ari, what's happening, Ari? How are you making out with your Slant 6, brother man? Buick says he has video and sound. Okay, we're all good. Okay. Gavin Dowells, hi from Melbourne. What's happening, brother man?
Man.
My upside down brother.
Yeah. It's what middle of winter over there.
Led Zeppelin Werewolf Girl 73. Nice. You know, I've been accused of being a werewolf by people in the past.
Well, when you let your beard grow out, I bet it does look very werewolfy.
Well, it's this thing called langophobia, okay? Where it's like you actually are possessed by the spirit of a certain type of animal. So that would be like a werewolf.
Right.
So I've had people, you know, like when I had the coffee house, I had all sorts of people around me. And study all sorts of different things and whatnot.
Right. And very eclectic.
I actually had a couple of people, independent, didn't know each other, that said that I was a werewolf.
Well, don't bite me.
Well, yeah, it's not like that.
Don't rip my head off.
It's not like the movies where you grow claws and hair and everything. It's that you're possessed by a certain spirit, as I've come to understand this.
Right.
Whether it's true or not, I don't know. But independently, other people.
Let's talk air conditioning. Tommy Summers said a guy named Tommy Summers wants to talk air conditioning. It must be heating up over there.
Okay, Ari says, I joke. I took it back to the machine shop for him to polish the crank down to a lot more clearance. Also bringing him the pistons and rods to make sure I don't have the same issue twice. Okay. Dean Brown just watched the Slant 6 Miata update. Do you love that car? I love that car. Even Dallas loves that car.
I do. I like the power to weight idea behind it.
Yeah.
But it would be economical and fun to drive, right? Because I mean, it's got a short wheelbase, really lightweight car. It's going to be sprightly no matter what.
If you're going to drive it every day, you need an overdrive.
It does have some gear, and the motor was buzzing up, but you're only buzzing 170 cubes.
Yeah, it'll run. You know, it'll run out, but it's just like it'll start to get grating after a while. You know what I mean?
Right.
You know, it's a little too much, right? But no, if you're going to drive the perfect day, the purpose of the car is for autocross.
Right, and you need steep gears for autocross. You got to accelerate around turns, right?
I'll take it for an occasional ride through town and stuff like that. You know, I take it for an occasional cruise. So I'm not going to road trip, and it'll never see the interstate, but it'll be a terror in a parking lot. You know?
Oh yeah, well, I mean, it'd be terror just running around Murfreesboro, right? So,
Uncle Squirrel says he was once a were-squirrel. I believe that. Winky is killer. What's Winky's weight? 2,143 pounds, as per the weigh-in today.
We got to put him on a diet. He's already getting portly.
The law of diminishing returns. Unfinished project. I missed what you were talking about, but I am very interested in the law of diminishing returns. Okay, Critter Craig, Tony, did you get the email from me and saw the hole in the timing cover? No, I didn't. The code has been timed out. All is well with the world. Okay, it's the Kickendall. What's happening, brother man?
Well, it's hot here. Well, it's not so hot right now because it's overcast. But man, is it getting hot here. Somebody was talking air conditioning, and I think it'd be kind of cool if we could do some tech tonight on air conditioning.
We could talk about air conditioning. But first, let's answer Matt's question. How hard would it be to find parts for a 69 Torino with a 302?
I would think that would be pretty easy.
I would think so, too.
Yeah, I mean, because you just need a 69 302 is what you're looking at, right? I mean, gosh, they got to be a dime a dozen.
Eddie, I'm still set over having to use a swivel. Bro, I had a crisis over that. Believe me, I looked at everything I could possibly do to move and to get it up, but no, that ain't gonna happen. You have to use a swivel on that one ball. Paul Cabazol, did I put a manual valve in the Miata? No, I did not. It's going to stay automatic. So this way, let's just say his wife wants to take it around an autocross track. I want her to be able to just put it in drive and just go. So no, it's not going to have an automatic a manual valve on it.
How do I figure out my gear ratio with an overdrive? Oh, it's easy. You take the gear ratio and multiply it by your overdrive.
Right, 0.0, whatever your overdrive
ratio is. Yeah, and most of them are around, like, depending on what you're using. Like a 700R4 is what, 0.76. If it's a 204R, it's 0.67. The AOD is 0.67.
David Newsom says, my wife has a Miata and I have a 225 slant. If you want another project, I can bring it to you. Oh, I know, I've already done that trick. Now we got to do the next one.
Yeah, I would bet. See, Danny Boyd's bringing up a good point. 302 parts are pretty easy, and 69 Torino parts probably not so much. Because 69 Torino, wasn't that the first year of the Torino? Or was 68 the first year of the Torino? I think it was a Falcon one of those years, wasn't it? Something weird like that.
I don't even know. The fastback Torino, that I think that was 68 was the first year for that.
What was it, 68?
I think it's one of the most beautiful body styles ever. There's a guy in my neighborhood.
And you know, I always hear nothing but hate on those cars.
I don't know why.
I think they're good looking. They look a lot like a GMA body, in my opinion. They look pretty good.
I think that they took the best elements and proportioning of the 66, 67 Charger and made it right.
Well, that Charger 500, that sucker does look like one of those 68 Torinos.
Yes. Wait, the Charger 500.
Isn't that the one with the slotted grill and the headlights that are recessed?
No, it's the other way around.
Or non-recessed headlights?
Yeah, they use a 68 Coronet grill in it to mount it flush, and it has a flush mounted back window.
Oh,
but if you look at the fastback 66, 67 Charger, the Torino is like the next cleaner step.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Oh, I agree with that back window with being the way that it is.
I love that.
Well, you know what? And that was one thing that never really got the love that it deserved, was those big sloping fastback windows like that. I mean, there's a few cars that pulled it off, but they say you either love it or you hate it, right? Like 67 through 69 Barracuda. You either love it or hate them. I love them. I think they look great.
I like the Torinos better.
Do you really?
Yeah. And we were just talking about this. We were hanging out before we come on here, and we were talking about Mustangs, right? And in my mind, the Holman and Moody long-nosed Mustangs, the 66 long-nosed Mustangs, are the most beautiful car ever built. There's just something about them, the proportioning, the way the back wheels fill the wheel well, the stretch that they put on them, they're just beautiful. It's just perfectly proportioned from every angle. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I was looking at Ruckwartz one here is telling me on an episode of Adam 12 named Who Won, has Reed's race car with the AHRA sticker on the window. Lots of nice camera time.
That was all filmed at Lions Drag Strip. And that was actually his car.
And it was an AHRA track.
Yeah. Yeah. So, the first episode of the AHRA Drag Racing History Channel, we're going to be talking about Lions. But in that episode of Adam 12, that was all filmed at Lions. And the actor who played Reed, what was his name?
Oh, I don't know.
Whatever his name was, whatever the actor's name was, the race car that they show in that episode was actually his race car.
Huh. Well, Abel D is asking, Uncle Tony, do you guys think those Buick engines will fit Land Rover R380 transmissions or auto transmissions? Are they heavier than the aluminum 215s? I'm not entirely sure. Originally, when I was reading this, I thought it was about the 215 would it bolt up, and yes, it'll bolt up to those. The aluminum 215 will bolt up to those Land Rover transmissions, but the later Buicks, no, they have Buick Olds Pontiac bell housing. It's a different bell housing altogether.
Martin Miller? No, it was the other guy, Kent McCord. That's it. Steve Pastoro's got it. Kent McCord. Yeah, that was his race car. There were a lot of people that ran cars back then. The Smothers brothers had a
they had a stocker.
They had an AHRA stocker.
Yeah.
Right. Who Who else? I know there were.
Well, you got TV Tommy, of course, right? But you're talking about
I'm talking about
actors, right?
TV actors from that late '60s, early '70s.
I'm trying to think right now.
The Smothers Brothers had an Oldsmobile stock.
Right, they ran Oldsmobiles.
Yeah.
They had a deal with Olds.
Yeah.
It was a factory back team, but man, I can't remember. There's quite a few of them that were famous. Well, I think it was TV Time that had the contract where it limited him driving, right? And that's where he ended up bringing in Don Perdome to fill in some spots.
Yeah, that was he was on the Margie TV show. When was that? That was 59, I think, or 1860.
Yeah, and then it kind of put a hindrance on his career, and then he decided, well, I'm going all in drag racing, and they made. Well, I think when he renegotiated his contract, all that was out, right? So
it was when he bought the 4-engine car for a photo shoot.
That's when he renegotiated the contract, or that's when they said no
That's
bueno.
when they said no bueno. Because up to that point, they knew about his T-bucket.
Right.
Which a lot of people don't know. Tommy Ivo invented the T-bucket, right? They thought that it was just like a hobby thing that he did.
Right.
You know what I mean? And then he was going to bring his T-bucket and they were going to do a photo shoot around it. Instead, he shows up with a 4-engine car.
Right.
No.
Well, he had the twin engine car before that. The twin engine, what it was like a Dragmaster chassis or something similar.
Yeah, well, he had a couple of different incarnations that he had. 2 injected Buicks on gasoline. Then he had 1 injected Buick and 1 blown Buick.
Uh-huh.
Right, and then he did the 4-engine car. But it was the 4-engine car that the producers saw and said, "No,
no more.
You're under contract. You ain't doing this stuff."
Yeah,
and that's what. So Perdome drove the 4-engine. From what I understand, Ivo only drove the 4-engine car once.
Who?
Ivo.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know.
He only drove it once. He had other drivers in it.
Yeah, while he was under contract, that show wouldn't let him run, right? Yeah. So he had other people drive. But I know that Perdome drove quite a bit of his stuff. Him and Perdome were pretty good friends.
Okay. They had a Dragula, right?
Yeah, I was thinking of that earlier, but I don't know who owned it. Well, actually, I saw that car at the Peterson. I went to the Peterson in like 2005, and it had, oh man, who was the guy, the big dude, George Barris, right? It had his entire collection up for sale, his original stuff, and it had the Dragula there.
Well, about 2 years ago, was it 2 years ago? It was last year. It was last year. Maybe it was 2 years ago. It doesn't make any difference. They had a show up in Nashville, and they booked in the guy who played Eddie Munster.
Oh, all right.
Butch Patrick, I think his name is.
Okay.
And he had the Dragula there.
Oh.
So I says, well, I would love to shoot a feature on the Dragula, So I went up there and I introduced myself and all that. And he just treated me like a dick.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was a real dick.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I just, done.
Well, that's I guess what happens when you have a hairline that starts right above your eyebrow, right?
I mean, he was like very uncool, very, very uncool.
Well, and I've been disappointed like that myself. When you meet somebody that you think would be very laid back and cool, and then you're like, what the fuck is wrong with this guy? Did I just miss something? Did I punch somebody? James Garner.
The Baja cars.
Yeah, we actually talked about those not too long ago, right? Where the old Ollie, the Bronco, that's what the slag hammer, that's what I was telling you. The slag hammer's like one of those. You got to finish the slag hammer, just like that Cutlass.
I'm back on the slag hammer. Tony, we were talking about the 66 gas Ronda Mustang. That's one of them, yeah. Yeah, Holman and Moody built 11 or 12, I believe, of those cars. And those were the answer to the altered wheelbase. Okay, so
Dodges.
Yeah. So first you had the 2% cars in 64. Then you had the crazy altered wheelbase cars that like people knew as funny cars, and that was mid 65 with those cars. And then Holman and Moody built the Mustangs to compete with the altered wheelbase Chrysler cars, but that was a bit too late. And that's when Mercury came up with the flip-top cars for the beginning of 1966.
Right.
That was a crazy era, man, where just stuff was just happening.
Well, and Steve Magnante talks about this in his video, but it went in a 2-year period from like a car with an altered wheelbase to like a top fuel dragster tube chassis car in a 2-year period, right? And if, in my personal opinion, I wish it would have never went blown, because the injected funny cars, there was a lot of them and they were very cost effective.
The
Right?
problem with injected nitro is that they're incredibly inconsistent.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The heat from the blower, the heat that the blower puts in the intake manifold,
Uh-huh.
helps to lighten the fuel load and make it easier for the spark plug to light it.
Oh, gotcha.
Without the pressurization in the intake manifold, an injected nitro motor becomes very, very finicky. So you've got to run a lot of compression to build heat in
that's what I heard, yeah.
that way, but then you're dancing on the edge of detonation.
Oh, I didn't even know you could detonate nitromethane.
Oh, yeah.
That's what's pushing out head gaskets and
Yep.
all that stuff, and blowing the blowers off? Okay.
So it's not that the blower makes any more power with nitro, because it doesn't. It just makes it easier to light. And so you can run the motor with lower static compression ratios and get power out of it.
Well, Danny Boyd's saying that the guy from the Jay Giles band was a factory certified Ferrari mechanic.
That's an impressive thing in your resume.
Especially when you're like, hey, I'm showing up for this job. I was in the Jay Giles band before this. I'm also a factory certified Ferrari mechanic.
Buick Performance Support Channel. In Tommy Evo's Showboat, didn't two engines run in reverse? Yeah, the two engines run in the front axle.
You guys being in Tennessee, Marty Robbins tore up a lot of dirt tracks around there and Chryslers. You know what else too? Who was the banjo picker? He had the super picker, super stock.
Yeah.
Roy Clark. Yeah. But yeah, that's a lot of that stuff went down here in Tennessee.
Wild Rose Garage. I've seen Nitro Harley's diesel down the track many times. I built a Pro Fuel Harley when I first moved to Tennessee. I bought a chassis and I bought enough parts to build, an engine, and I actually fired it up and did some trippies in my driveway. But as I was trying to learn about the tuning of those things, it was every time I would go to a race, it was just like, to try to absorb what was going on with those. It's all over the map. It's very inconsistent, very hard to. So they were using correct me if I'm wrong, okay? Because this is we're going back almost 20 years ago that they did this. So I built this bike, and the problem that they were having was a lean spot when you open the throttle. Obviously that's an issue.
Right.
So they had a slosh tank, okay?
Uh-huh.
So that when you hit the throttle and the clutch hit, the fuel would splash out of the top of this tank down into the carburetor, because there's a carburetor.
And just fatten it up.
Just fatten it up. So it was a slosh tank. And that's how they tune these fucking things.
Oh, wow.
So, about how much fuel would jump out of this container and get sucked into the carburetor at the hit of the throttle. And I was like, you know what? My life is too complicated. I really can't get involved in this. And so I walked away from it.
Oh, well, there's Fubar's putting up the link to the AHRA merch and then our AHRA webpage.
Fubar the axe.
I know he's all over it. And then, you know what we haven't promoted in a while? The Slanted Nationals.
We have not, but I did talk about that on today's video.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, because people keep asking, when's Battle Rock going out? When's Plan Z going out? Battle Rock is going on the 17th, which is not this weekend, the following weekend. And then Plan Z is going to be at the Slanted Nationals in Sikeston, Missouri on September 5th.
Right. But you are going to get some test hits on it before you get it out.
Yeah, but I don't know when. I don't have a date for that.
All right. Well, Mopar Mark is asking, what's involved with converting my AC in my 93 Ford F-150 from R12 to R134? Well, you're in luck, Mark, because that body style truck came with R134 in the later years. So anything 94 and up came with R134. If you really wanted to convert it right, go find a 94 and later truck, take all the stuff out, and put it in your 93. If you don't want to do that, the simplest thing to do is probably run the condenser out of the 94 and up, and you need to change your fittings and your orifice tube, I think would be the big ones.
Okay, that would be, okay, on a Ford and a GM, you have an orifice tube. On a Chrysler, you've got an expansion valve.
Right.
Right? And I have found that it works exactly the same on the 134.
Oh, really?
I've pumped 134 into
R12
old Chrysler
systems?
R12 systems and never had. Okay, there is one problem. The ester oil that you use with the 134,
You got to change it out.
you got to change it out. And if you put too much, it clogs the expansion valve, which is what I've got going on right now
Oh,
with Kathy Sminger.
oh,
I
okay.
overdid it with the oil, and instead of like being cautious, I was like,
What does it matter? The more, the better.
So now what happens is you get ice cold air for about
5 minutes, and then
5
it
or
locks
10
up the
minutes.
pump.
No, the expansion valve. I guess it congeals at the expansion valve.
Oh, okay.
You know?
Because I did one like that with the orifice tube,
Yeah.
and it locked up the orifice tube and broke the orifice tube,
Really?
right? And then locked the compressor. Yeah.
Okay.
But
Well, yeah, when the orifice tube comes apart, it goes to the compressor.
right.
Yeah, luckily we don't have that with the Chrysler products.
Oh. But I have had problems with R12 systems sitting at an idle, they won't blow cold, right? And that's just because the orifice tube, the diameter of the hole is considerably larger on the R12 system than the R134. But you're talking thousands, right? So the higher RPM that you run, the better that it cools.
Olive says the green O-rings would be good. Yes, I have like the whole package of them. I've never changed the O-rings and never had a problem. That's not to say that's not to say what I'm giving you textbook. You know what I mean? You should change the O-rings. I have not changed the O-rings and I have not had a problem. That doesn't mean it's right. But I'm just saying you take a chance. You know what I mean? Get 2 cans of 134, pump it into your car, and see what happens. I mean, it's,
well, the funniest thing is like guys always do. You've heard of the vacuuming out, right?
Yeah.
The vacuum out the system. Okay. So when you vacuum out the system, the whole idea is to remove moisture in the air, right? Buying a vacuum pump for that is generally a couple $100, right? If not more than that, if you buy a good system, right?
I used a refrigerator compressor.
Did you? Oh, well, what I did was like I looked at it like, okay, what else removes water, right? Moisture from the air. So I blew compressed CO2 through the thing. CO2 will displace oxygen and the water out of there, right?
Right.
And then it's heavier. So after you pull the caps off, oxygen doesn't run back in there, right? Then you cap it off and then you put your system together.
Okay, that's all I do.
But I mean, I was always cheap AC guy about it because I never took it to anybody. I'm like, I had cars without AC, and the closest thing you got to AC was like a 60s car with a vent under the dash, right? Which is badass because those don't break really. And they work okay.
See, when I was a mechanic, when I used to do this stuff on the daily, I had an old refrigerator compressor, and I ran that as an evacuation pump. And with that thing, once this thing pulled hard, and you would actually get steam come out of it.
Really?
Yeah. When you stop seeing steam come out,
you're ready to rock and roll.
Yeah, you crack it. There's a vacuum. You open the can, right, and it sucks the whole can just like that without running it. Yeah.
Oh, I'm making you miss corner vent windows. Los Cadaver's missing his corner vent windows.
Kickendall says nitrogen works good for purging systems as well. We did it on a ship for dry air systems. We crack them up. Okay.
Yeah. He sounds like it might be a sailor.
Rockwards had an old fridge compressor too. They were great, right?
So how did you get the fittings for the old fridge compressor? You just made something up?
Yeah, if I remember correctly, because this was going back a while ago, I used 1/4-inch tubing. I had a compression fitting from the 1/4-inch tubing to an old fitting from a set of gauges, and a step up to I believe it was a 5/16, a compression fitting on the inlet line of the compressor, which was 5/16 down to 1/4-inch.
Okay.
So, and it worked fine.
Huh.
I used it for years.
Oh, all right. Well, David Tristan's saying vacuuming a refrigerant circuit is most critical on, what does that say?
Hermetic compressors, like house AC.
Oh, due to the oil turning into acid and eating the windings.
That's interesting. I never knew that.
My car's AC is just propane. I imagine propane would work just fine.
There's lots of things that work just fine, but isn't a leak dangerous?
Well, you would think under the hood, maybe.
Yeah, man, if you pop a line, you know what I mean? Like just for the sake of argument, you know what I mean? Like a line lets go, or I mean, couldn't that be a little hairy?
Oh, well, the kicking doll is a Navy sailor.
Actually, come to think of it, it's right. When they first started taking the R12 off the market, that's exactly what they used to replace it.
Propane?
They were cans of propane. They called it something else, but it was actually propane.
Huh.
It's just like the diesel, just like the DEF liquid. You know, they call it something, but it's really pig piss.
Right. Danny Boyd saying propane is illegal in a car.
It damn well should be.
Well, I don't know if that's entirely true, because if you go, like, there's somebody on here from Melbourne, all their taxis run on propane.
No, it's talking about from AC. From an AC.
Oh, for an AC standpoint?
Bumstick says motorhomes and trailers use propane. Okay.
Huh.
Well, so we've got a lot of propane fans here.
Yeah, well, I was looking at doing a propane-powered car. Because when gas started doubling in price, I'm like, oh, man, it looks like it's going to be 2008 all over again, right? So I started looking at propane setups that you can put on cars. And you can buy them cheap. They're like propane carburetors, like $250, $300.
Big Bear says Mr. Heavy Chevy uses air duster spray to charge his R12 systems. See, I love the creativity with this stuff. You know, it's like, now I've got a bunch of ideas.
We got to do propane something. I think it'd be kind of cool to do a propane something.
Roger Bagwell wants to know, Dallas, where are AHRA tracks located? I'm in Arkansas.
The closest one to you is Jeffers Motorsports Park in Sykeston, Missouri. Then the next closest would probably be KD Dragway in South Webster, Ohio. And then we have Northeast Dragway in, it says Hertford, North Carolina, but it's actually like Elizabeth City. It's closer to Elizabeth City, I believe.
David Tristan, scared of 2 pounds of propane as refrigerant with cars are driving around with 20 gallons of gasoline in the tank.
Oh, that's a good point.
It is a point, but propane, it's an explosive gas, you know? Yeah, I mean, gasoline has the vapors are ignitable, but propane is much lighter, and propane will find like a little static charge. Like for instance, let's just say you've got a couple of older plug wires, and they're sharing, the kind of thing where it's not bad enough to miss, but you open the hood at night and you can see like the corona around the spark plug wire. Well, that'll light propane. It won't light gasoline. So that's why I would be more concerned about propane than gasoline.
It's funny. Craig A is asking, when's the next part of the 455 Buick? We were just talking about it.
Tomorrow morning.
Yeah, we're gonna go over intake manifolds and camshafts.
Yeah.
So that's the
and exhaust manifolds.
Exhaust manifolds.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I got them all then.
All of the stuff that goes around.
Okay.
The big Buick.
So do you want to do valve training then?
Anything that pertains to the external bits of.
Okay. Sounds good. Oh, I got a B4B that we're going to throw up there, Mr. Ruckwarts. So that way you can see the trunk option stage 2 intake manifold.
A lot of manufacturers have had factory propane systems for years, buses and trucks too.
Yeah.
It's new to me. I'm not, with AC, I've only used R12 and the 134. I think I tried it with 22 once and it didn't work.
Oh, what did that say? Was there any? Did I miss it? Are there any benefits to an early 350 Pontiac over a 350 Chevy? Oh man. Well, the 350 Pontiac is kind of, in my opinion, the 350 Chevy was always lackluster when it came to low end grunt on the street. In my opinion, my humble opinion, was the worst truck motor ever made. The worst, right? I mean, out of good truck motors, a 350 Pontiac would have been much better because it's much more suited for streetability. It has good low-end grunt, just like a 350 Olds. But that's just my opinion. But if you're looking at horsepower numbers, I bet you that Chevrolet would walk all over that 350 Pontiac. Los Cadaver says his 215 hits $7,000 now. It runs it up at $7,000.
That's screaming, but it's a little motor.
Yeah.
It likes, little engines like big RPM. Need Metal wants to know if we're doing a video chronicling the Miata refinements. Yes, the Miata is a permanent part of the fleet. It's not going anywhere. So as we go through, life with that car, of course, we're going to cover everything that we do to it and its evolution as it goes down the road.
Yeah, and Danny Boyd, you're bringing up a good point. There is a lot of Pontiac 350s out there that were pretty healthy, but man, stumbling upon one these days is going to be pretty hard. And if we were just talking comparison to comparison, because there's 350 Chevys out there that came with 350 horse, but the Pontiac when you had the ramrods, was that an Oldsmobile? No, I think that was the Pontiac. One of them was a ramrod. One of them was a ramrod. That was an Oldsmobile. Okay, then the W31 was an Oldsmobile as well.
Yeah.
So what was the Pontiac's version of that?
I should know this. I was a technical editor for High Performance Pontiac magazine. And I'm totally drawing a blank.
I was told as a kid to leave the Pontiac 350s alone. Oh, no. Look, all right. So Pontiac is probably one of the most unique engine manufacturers out there, considering that every block was the same dimension, right? So you could have a 301 or you could have a 455 and nobody would be the wiser. They look the same.
The thing about those Pontiacs, though, the ones he's talking about, the ones to stay away from, they have that Siamese, the center exhaust ports. Those are the engines that have 3 header tubes on each side.
Isn't that the Oldsmobiles?
No, that's Pontiacs.
Okay.
That's the smaller Pontiacs, like the 350 and some of the 400s, I believe. Somebody will know the specifics on that.
No, Danny Boyd, that's wrong. Buick in 70 had a 315 horse Buick 350. I have seen that. Kurt Dentke is asking me if I've ever seen the 215 powered chainsaw. I have seen that sucker. Maybe that's what we should build, is a 215 powered chainsaw. Yeah, 1970.
It was Ram Air, right?
The Ram Air was the small blocks?
No. The Ramrod was the Oldsmobile, and the Ram Air was the Pontiac.
Okay.
Let's see. A.R. Valari Dunn Jr. This is the Hemi Killer channel. I've killed plenty of Hemis. Most of that Ram Air 2 is Pontiac. So here's some trivia. Okay. Pontiac cast a handful, I think a total of 5 aluminum Ram Air 5 motors.
Oh, really? Like a whole aluminum block and everything?
All aluminum block, aluminum heads, right? 2 of them. I spent a weekend over at Arnie Beswick's place. This is back in the 90s. And Arnie was showing me around not the barn that burned down, obviously, but the stuff that he saved from the barn.
From the barn that burned down, yeah.
And up in the rafter, like this corner of this area that was all the old stuff, he had 2 brand new, never run aluminum Ram Air 5 blocks.
Oh, wow.
With heads and everything else. And they cast them specifically I believe they cast them for Don Gay, who was the person who put in a request for them.
Right. Well, he was the Pontiac dealer, right?
They were trying to run them they were trying to run them to be competitive with the 426 Hemi in 1969.
Right.
So they decided to give the aluminum motor a shot. So I know for a fact that there are two. They still exist. There are two all aluminum Ram Air 5 Pontiac motors.
Well,
I actually touched them with my hands.
the Kicking Doll is asking, what was the Buick big block for the that the Air Force used for the start cart for the SR-71? And he said he thought it was a 455. They're actually 401 nail heads.
Are they?
Two 401 nail heads. Yeah, they're the 4-barrel version, so they're the what you would have seen as 445 because they're rated on torque. So it's two 445 foot-pounds of torque, 401 nail heads. And then they were replaced later in the years by big block Chevrolets. Because that was the only thing they left that could make that torque apparently at that RPM.
Los Cadavra. Starfire was a cool block, but have you or Dallas ever heard of the Starlight aluminum block?
No.
Well, wouldn't that be the all-wheel version of the Buick?
That was the
Jetfire.
The Jetfire engine.
Well, no, wait, the Jetfire
That was the car.
package.
No, that was the car. And you had the Starfire and the Jetfire, right?
Right.
I don't know what the engine was called for the Oldsmobile, the turbocharged Oldsmobile. I wonder if it was the Jetfire engine.
Okay. Yes, this is. Thank you, Lexus Tech. Okay, hi guys. I've got a 2-bolt truck 454 block and GM forged 454 crank. What would you consider most important when selecting pistons, rods, heads for nitrous?
Oh, man. What do I consider the most important for pistons, rods, and heads? Well, how much nitrous are you going to use is the big question. But I'm assuming we'll say you're going with a 300 shot.
Right, I was going to say, assume the outer limits of a 300 shot.
Yeah. So a 300 shot, one, you're going to need a good forged piston. And the rods, it's got to be an H-beam rod if you're going to spray 300 shot.
Really?
You know, I would assume so because the motor's probably going to make 500 horse. You give it a 300 shot, that'd be 800 horse, right? It's going to need some heavy duty rod. You can probably get away with a good set of I-beam rods that you could probably buy for that. The bottom end would probably be like a Crowler I-beam. That'd be about the only thing I would touch. You know, there's Lenati has some stuff out there that's pretty stout, but I would definitely go with an H-beam rod on that thing.
The thing I would want to do is build a motor on the loose side, you know, an extra 1,000 oil clearance on the rods and mains, and gap the rings for nitrous. Make sure, you know.
That's the big one.
Yeah, that's really the big thing. You can get away with a lot as long as those clearances are large.
Yeah, on a big block Chevrolet, it's probably what, a 28 thousandths? You're probably looking at 28 thousandths
20
or more.
30 thousandths, yeah. And do the second ring as well.
Yeah, and you know what? Don't worry if you get a 1,000th over, right?
Yeah.
That's not a big deal. It's when you're 1,000th under.
Right. Always err on the side of large.
Wild Rose Garage is saying, I played with 3 Pontiac 400s and it didn't make much power, but I know a guy with a 389 tri-power and it pulls hard. You know, the magic behind the Pontiacs really was the cylinder heads. You had to have the right cylinder head before it made any power. Crowler's made in China. Never again Crowler. Where did you hear that, bump stick? Crowler's all made in San Diego, California. So I don't know where he's getting that idea from. You can go down to the plant and see all the stuff being made. They'll take you on a tour.
Mid-muscle says get some diamond nitrous specific pistons. Don't cheap out.
I think pistons is probably your best friend. Like when you get nitrous specific pistons, that's probably your best option. What's going on with our camera?
I don't know.
Is our cameraman, he's cheaping out.
Hang on, guys.
Put your beer down, cameraman.
Hang on. Right there.
Are we good?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay.
That was weird, right?
Yeah, I was like, what is happening there? This thing doesn't want to stay down. Yeah, all the shows that we've done, it's just been hanging out on the engine stand, and it's never done that.
Yeah.
Or on the engine hoist. But of course, we do the hot
Building,
evening.
the Vorman stuff, it's a building collapse. Oh, that's horrible. Can you imagine, man? You're just, you're chilling, and all of a sudden
Your building starts falling down around
please.
you. Let's see. Curtis Randolph is asking, is the 59 Pontiac 389 known as a good motor? I don't know about 59.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the heads might be a little on the primitive side. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kickendall, thank you, sir. California is almost as bad as China these days. Saying something made in San Diego isn't saying much anymore. Oh, man.
Well, it used to be really high quality stuff. Crowder did. I don't know if they are anymore. I don't know if they've sold out. When I lived down there 5 years ago, you could go take a tour of the place, and they were making all the stuff in house.
Worst things first. Is there any practicality in opening oil passages on your 440? No. Leave them alone. Two things about that, right? The first is that if you're familiar with other engines, like if you've ever been inside of a Buick or inside of a Ford or inside of a Chevy, even a big block Chevy, and then you look at the big block Chrysler, you know the oil passages are more than enough. The second is that even today at 12,000 horsepower, Top Fuel motors still use stock size oil passages. The stock
funny.
size price oil passages.
Yeah, the Buicks I have a 1/2-inch drill bit that's 14 inches long, which is the first step in opening up the small block because it's already smaller than it's 7/16 passage, right? But the big block Buicks, they're all from 67 to 69, they're 1/2-inch, and then in 70, the majority of those are 1/2-inch as well. But the stage 1 supposedly got the 5/8 inch treatment, and then every one of them made after 71 has a 5/8 inch diameter oil feed passage.
No, I have a TFX block sitting in the garage, and the oil passages on that are identical to the 383 that's sitting next to it.
Oh, really? They're ginormous?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
RB383, is that such a thing? Yes, 1 year only. There was also a 350 big block Mopar.
Yeah, well, is that before the 361?
Yeah.
So when somebody says they got a 350 big block, that really could have been a thing.
That actually could have been a thing, yeah.
Huh.
Chris Scaduto, I have a 2005 liter with DIS. What's the best way to run a distributor on it?
A 2005 liter?
That's not a Windsor based motor.
That is a Windsor based. It's probably out of an Explorer. They had the GT40P head motors up to 2001.
Right.
So all you do is take the dummy drive. It's actually a cam sensor for that EDIS system out and drop a 302 distributor right in there. It's the same thing. You just got the bottom half of a distributor, and then on the top it'll just be a slot, so it'll show when the cam is up or down. That's it. So Buicks don't feed oil and Olds don't drain back. Yeah, that's pretty much the case. The Buick, once you get it feeding oil, which is pretty simple, you just got to buy a bunch of drill bits and be very careful with a bunch of rotary file bits, but you can get them feeding oil and then they drain back really well. Shorter throw crank for the 215 to avoid slapping the cam when timing. No, Los Cadaver, you're SOL on that. That 215 is the shortest crank stroke that you're going to get. The 350 is even worse. Generally, when the timing chain lets go on the 350, it takes out the cam, and then it'll probably end up breaking a rod.
David Newsom, I have an 82 Dodge truck with a 225. My crank pulley and power steering pulley don't line up. Nothing appears to have been changed. Any ideas what could be the problem? There's only one damper used across the whole line of Slant Sixes, and that would line up with the factory water pump and the factory alternator. For each of the accessories that would go in the front of that motor, you would have one pulley for the AC compressor that would bolt to that damper that has the pulley bolted into it. You have one for the power steering. So if you've got a combination of AC and power steering on that, you'll have the damper with the pulley built in, an accessory pulley in the front and an accessory pulley in the back. So I would guess that what you probably have is the AC accessory pulley bolted onto the wrong side of the damper. That's probably what it is. That's the only thing I can think of.
So there's a question here that Vernon Lewis asked. I recently scooped up a 78 Ford F-150 It's got the 400. Is that engine known for any issues? That 400 is actually a 400 Cleveland, right? And everybody called it a modified, right? 400 modified. And Holdner does a video. He had a video on one of these.
Okay.
And so the issues that engine has is it's a smog era V8, right?
It's a Weezer in the stock trim.
Right. But it was intended, it has greatness built into it because it's a freaking Cleveland.
Right.
That was the baddest small block made. You know, I'm sorry, anybody else out there, but
No, I'll give you that.
yeah, it was pretty healthy. So the 400, though, the piston sits so far in the bore, down from the bottom from the top of the deck, they're like 120 thousandths down, right? They were detonation prone, and they would detonate real easy. And a lot of it was because they had got the piston so far away from the quench pad on the head that it caused problems, you know. And that was the big one because they're using, if you think about it, 78, they're using a 40 thousandths head gasket then. So now you're 160 thousandths in the hole, right? And you're starting to get pretty far away. You're over 1/8 of an inch away from the quench pad on the head. But the simplest thing to do is get a thinner head gasket for a Cleveland, bring it up some, and then well, I don't know if it'll ever get rid of all that detonation, but the Cleveland was invented to have compression. That was the big thing. It was designed around compression.
Oh. Tony, advice for pistons on an RB383 59 Saratoga. I don't have. That's a 4-inch. Well, God, what is that now?
He's looking for some pistons, replacement pistons.
He's looking for replacement pistons. That's not a piston that you're going to have an easy time finding. See, the low deck 383 has a 4 1/4 inch piston, same as the 426 Hemi. The tall deck 383 has it's going to be the same diameter as a 361 low deck motor, but the pin is going to be in the wrong place.
I would try Badger pistons. Badger makes a lot of.
That's right.
Yeah, they make a lot of, I would say, early American model V8 pistons.
See, that's why we got to do this show together because I never would have thought Badger pistons until you said it.
Yeah,
it's like, yeah, that's right.
There's another one in Indiana too. I don't know if they even exist anymore. Damn it. Man, I'll have to go look them up now. They were. Damn it. I can't remember the name of that company. Do you remember the name of the company in Indiana? They originally sponsored, so the Detroit Pistons basketball team used to be in Indiana, I think. And it was named after that company. Or no, it's Badger. Badger Pistons, that's them. And then you have Egg
Machine, yeah.
They're the other ones that do the off-brand pistons.
They do a lot of, like if you need pistons for like a straight 8 Buick, that's the company to go to. So, yeah. Ralph Thompson does Ohio Pistons.
Oh yeah, 400 modified is a good motor. It's just once you get rid of that detonation issue, they're pretty solid then after that. But they kept blowing out head gaskets because of detonation.
Vinny LC, when building a high lift or forced induction performance engine, what is the best way to calculate your needed spring pressures for your camshaft?
Oh,
yes, the camshaft manufacturer.
I know a guy that could actually rattle this off the top of his head. Shane Polito.
Yeah, Shane, right. Get a hold of Shane Polito over at
he's at TCI, right?
Yeah, they'll just spit that stuff off the top of his head. First off, a forced induction motor doesn't really alter the need for spring pressure, because you force induction, you're fighting to get the thing open, not get it closed. So it's more a factor of valve weight, ramp profile, valve train weight. Because remember now, the valve spring has to overcome the valve train weight. So, like for instance, the exhaust valve on a 426 Hemi versus the exhaust valve on, let's say, a big block Chevy, the Hemi is going to require more valve spring because the rocker is so much heavier and the push rod is so much longer. And you see what I'm saying? So every engine is going to be very specific and very different as far as its valve spring requirements. But the act of adding forced induction doesn't change the requirement for valve springs because you're if anything you're fighting to get the valve open, not closed. So it's RPM oriented. But original, right? Thing I said, ask the manufacturer.
Yeah.
Ask your cam manufacturer.
If you're using a stock cam, you could probably get away with stock replacement springs.
Well, no, he's not using a stock cam. He's saying for a
high lift
for a
cam.
hot motor. You know, you want to talk to the cam manufacturer.
Yeah.
And they'll tell you, bingo, exactly. This is what you need.
So,
Dimitri, what's happening, brother? Looking for what a mechanic should charge for replacing the rings on a 273 for a 65 Chrono 440 sedan. Just want to want you to save up. Thanks.
oh man, you're talking about a refresh almost.
Yeah, you're talking about a rebuild. You're talking about a rebuild, Dimitri. It's not as simple as that. When you break that motor down, you're going to find that it's got all sorts of cylinder wall wear.
It might have crank wear. It might have.
I wouldn't even worry about crank wear. The odds of this 273 crank showing any wear
Is nil.
slim to none.
Okay.
But the cylinder walls are going to be a different story. Dimitri,
Oh, are those 273s kind of like a Chevrolet where they would eat the cylinder walls really bad?
Yep. Dimitri,
You're probably looking at boring the block, buying new pistons. I mean, you'd probably be in the neighborhood of $4,000.
yeah, I wish no, I don't think that much.
Well, if he's going to bore the block, buy new pistons, right, and reassemble the whole motor, and he's paying somebody to do it.
They paying someone to do it. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, Dimitri, it's not that simple. I wish that it was, my brother.
I think the best thing to do on that one, Dimitri, to be honest with you, after thinking about it for a second, pull the motor yourself. Pull the motor yourself, take it to the machine shop, and just have them rebuild the motor.
No, Dimitri says he's not good at internals. Dimitri, it's not that you're not good at internals. You're just not familiar enough with them, right? Trust me on this. Break that motor down. Take that motor out. Break it down. And then you'll find every bit of information you need to put it back together again on YouTube, in forums. There's so many resources for people who want to just reassemble their own engine. You can do it, man. You can do it. You just need to want to.
Right. And see, that's what does this say? Big-headed Martian? Or no, I'm sorry.
Yeah, big-headed Martian.
Greg McDonald says, check the taper. If it's okay, re-ring it, put it back together. And if it doesn't have a lot of miles, you probably can get away with that. That's what I did with the 400 Buick that's in the Suburban, and I just re-ringed it.
I can tell you from experience, right? Tearing these motors down, or how many of them. The 273s, the smaller bore engines like the 273s, tend to be harder on the cylinder walls than, let's say, the 318s or the 340s.
I would say that has a lot to do with the stroke, I think.
The stroke is the same.
Is it the same as a 318?
Yeah, same stroke, same rod length, but it
has something to do with that smaller bore.
Yeah, like you tear down.
That would kind of make sense. It has less surface area for the ring to ride on, right?
So there's more friction per
small area
for the area. Because honestly, 273s, when I tear a 273 apart, they almost always need to be bored. 318s are hit and miss. 340s are always clean. So it's like they're the same engine, same crank, same rods, same ring composition. Everything is equal amongst those engines except for the bore size. And 273s tend to eat up the bores.
Yeah, Bump Stick's saying the same thing. He says smaller bores, harder on cylinders. I wonder why that is. It has to have something to do with that less surface area deal.
Uh-oh.
Did we lose chat?
Inspector business, less friction to be shared on piston skirt. Unfinished project. Dimitri, where are you? Tons of people would help you for a couple of beers. Yeah, no, seriously, Dimitri, he's right. When you tear that thing apart, jump on here and start looking for somebody who might be in the area, your area, that could give you a hand with that.
Oh, he says he's in Jersey. You're in Jersey. There's probably quite a few people on here from Jersey.
Dimitri is making hearts over there. Don't get too carried away, Dimitri. We like you. You know what I'm saying? But
don't love you.
Right. Bump Sticks telling Dimitri to come over. I hope it wasn't the hearts that are making you tell him. Oh. Okay.
You want something to drink? You want water?
You got water?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or I got a Sprite. If you
Don't
want
ask, don't tell.
you
All
want
right,
Sprite?
this is getting into the weird. No, just water, please. This is getting into the weirder end of the pool.
All right. Vinny LC is saying, what made the flathead such a bad design? Was it the complicated pass for the intake charge to get to the cylinder?
Exhaust.
Or was it the quench design in the head not optimized?
You're talking about the flathead Ford or the flathead in general.
It'd be the head. Didn't the head suck on them?
No, the
Because it
problem.
limited the air travel had to turn 180 degrees to go into the cylinder.
Well, okay, flathead Ford has got the same combustion chambers as Briggs and Stratton.
Right.
Okay, but the problem with the flathead Ford was the path of the exhaust. Okay, because the exhaust has to go between the cylinder walls.
Right.
So the
It has to
exhaust
go around
port
it. Yeah.
is tiny. It's weird. It creates all sorts of heat around. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
Yeah. So that's your problem with your flathead Ford. Flathead people who build. I have a lot of respect for people who build flathead Fords because they're like these are people who they ask for punishment. It's like, just punish me. You know what I'm saying? So the guys that make flathead Fords run. I give them all the respect in the world. My flathead industrial engines run forever. They do run forever. But like this is the flathead Ford, which is what everybody thinks of. You say flathead. I mean, every manufacturer built flatheads, but the flathead Ford is the one that people talk about. And I'm telling you, the thing with that was the exhaust path through the block is like. Ugh.
Oh. What is this? What's his name here? I can't read that.
What's happening, brother man?
Marco Cicerelli is asking, Dallas, do you remember the magazine called Engines? This magazine came out in 2000. They talked about putting a 455 Buick in a 65 wagon. Reading that magazine got me hooked on Buicks. I think that was a compilation magazine from like CarCraft. That was Freiberger did that. He did a 455 and a 65. And I think, to be honest with you, he was very disappointed. And I was pretty disappointed. There was a lot of guys who felt it should have ran a lot better than what it did.
I don't know why this just popped into my head, right? But this is like trivia, right? Like mechanic trivia, right? Okay. So you know the song Little Disc Coupe?
Yeah.
Right? Where it says it's ported and relieved and it's torqued. Well, relieving is what you do on a flathead.
Right.
A lot of people don't know that.
Yeah, you relieve the head so that the air goes through the cylinder, the actual chamber better.
Yeah.
It's like porting.
Well, it's creating a little dome in the path.
So it doesn't turn as sharp, right?
Yeah. Let's see. Tony, did you ever own an 812 Roadrunner or Super Bee? No, I've never owned one. I've had numerous 6-pack cars, but no, never an 812.
Is that what the 812 is? Is a 6-pack car?
Yeah. I did a drag test on one back in 85 or 86. I mean, I've driven them, but I've never owned one.
Let's see. Does that say burned out garage or bummed out garage? I can't read it without my glasses.
Burned out garage.
Hey, Uncle Tony, I'm picking up a 71 Duster tomorrow. Originally 340, 3-speed, 8 3/4. How do those 3-speeds hold up?
Excellent. That's the A230 3-speed. It was designed as a high performance. It's actually designed as a heavy duty truck transmission, but it's what they put behind the 340 and the 383, the HP motor, 383 Magnum, whatever you want to call them, in beginning of 1970, and it's a fully synchronized 3-speed. It's just a little bit lighter than an 833 4-speed. Big beefy transmission. They're strong. We used one in a pinch I used to drive a street race car for a guy years and years ago, and we actually used one of those. We had run out of 833s, so we grenaded every freaking 833 that we had, and in a pinch, we stuck an A230 in there, figuring because just to get one race off, and that transmission held up, and that was a strong bitch of a trans. So yeah, use it and enjoy it. It's
Well,
actually
it's
one
funny
of the sweetest.
that's come up because I just got offered a. You ever heard of a Dearborn 3-speed?
No.
Okay, it's a Ford top loader 3-speed manual,
Okay.
and it came in like the big block GM cars from like 68 to 70.
Oh, I know the one you're talking about.
Yeah. I think we talked about this
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah.
You know, but that's always fascinated me is that those 3-speed manuals, how stout they were, but everybody was wanting to use the 4-speeds. Was it just because of the extra gear, the multiplication from the extra gear?
Here's the thing, right? It depends on the combination. If you're building a mid-range torque engine, right?
Right.
The 3-speed is fine because you're taking advantage of that mid-range torque by keeping the motor in that range.
Right.
If you're building a higher RPM deal, if you're building a higher RPM engine with a narrower range, then the 4-speed is definitely advantageous. But like for instance, a 455 Buick,
Right.
that's going to make power to, let's say, 5,800, 6,000 RPM,
Right.
is going to give you the same net results with a 3-speed as, let's say, a 350 Chevy that's going to make power up between like 65 and 7,000 RPM,
Right.
with a 4-speed. The two will give you a comparable performance.
Okay, so then if I like the idea of it, okay, the reason why I thought it was neat was because I'm building that super stock car, that Sega super stock, and it says you got to run a manual transmission, no 5 speeds allowed. Well, I started thinking like, what if I ran a 3-speed manual, right? And because you got one less gear shift, so now you're 30% better probability of not missing a shift.
Yeah, but that engine needs RPM. The combination that you're building there, it needs some RPM. It's going to be a tighter range. So that okay. The drop between first and second on the 3-speed is going to be enough to really pull the motor down, and it's going to have to run to get
back up to
right. So whereas let's say it was a 455,
well, that 350 it does the same thing as the 455. It's got a big long stroke. They made 410 foot-pounds of torque stock.
Really?
Yeah. So I was thinking, man, this one's probably making 500 foot-pounds of torque at 2,800 on up. So it might be the train to use then, because as soon as you get it in second, that sucker's going to freight train.
Experimentation is the essence of hot rod.
I know, and I think it would bolt up to my bell housing. I think it probably has the same bolt pattern, but third gear is not 1-to-1. Oh, I bet it is.
Third gear is always 1-to-1. Not third gear. High gear is always 1-to-1.
I've got a 303 top loader 3-speed in my F-150. Huh. See, that in the GM, it was called a Dearborn. I think that's because if they called it a Ford transmission, everybody would be mad.
Lobo GTX. Here in Argentina exists the A230 4-speed. I have never heard of that. I am very fascinated by that. I'd like to know more about that.
What is it? The A230?
4-speed.
So what is this? What is the numbers dictating? The size?
What do you mean?
When he says A230, that means it's aluminum case. And normally when I hear A something, it's A833, right?
No, it doesn't. No, for Chrysler, it's just that was their designation for stuff. A233, A833, A904, right?
Oh,
I don't know why they did that. They stick a letter designation in front, but it has nothing to do with it's aluminum. Not they are aluminum, right? It's an aluminum trans with a cast iron case, a tail shaft rather.
Okay.
But the designation has nothing to do with it.
I'm wondering what that 284 is all about then.
I don't know.
Does those numbers dictate size or torque rating or?
No, on the Chrysler, it's the A833 is the 4-speed and the A230 is the 3-speed. And it's like, and there's no real rhyme or reason to how they did this either, because like the A903 is a 3-speed manual transmission. The A904 is a 3-speed automatic. The A745 is a 3-speed manual.
Okay.
So there's no,
It's all over the board, I
yeah,
guess.
it's all over the board.
Yeah, the problem would be getting a good shifter for it. I bet you nobody makes a good shifter for that Dearborn 3-speed.
Well, if it's based on a top loader, why couldn't you just use?
You probably could use a top loader, but wouldn't first gear is going to be the opposite of where it would normally be, right? So it'd be like down would be first, and then second would be up in the dash,
Yeah.
right? And then third.
Yeah.
But you could probably flip the shifter around.
No, I've used 4-speed shifters on 3-speed transmissions.
Have you?
Yeah, just second gear becomes first gear.
Huh.
And then first gear is reverse.
Okay.
Picture this, right? You got a 4-speed.
Right.
Okay? So on a Chrysler, reverse is towards you and forward, right?
Right.
Alongside first, second, third, fourth, right? Well, on a 3-speed, if you take that shifter and mount it on a 3-speed, then first is reverse, second is first, third is second.
Oh yeah,
fourth is
because it's the
third.
same pattern,
Yeah.
H pattern, right?
Yeah.
Huh. You just lose one gear. Oh wow. Okay.
Peter Kovacs, hard to shift quick with a 300 tree. I know, I've tried. They always, when you get real aggressive with them, they always bind up, and I don't know why that is, because there's no real rational reason. It's kind of like
I'll
like,
tell you why.
why.
You remember the GM G bodies from like the 70s?
Sure.
Okay. You remember how notorious they were for crapping out motor mounts?
Mhm.
And then it would bind the linkage and put the car in reverse as you're going down the road if you stood on it, right?
Yeah, okay.
Same thing's applying to your 3-speed. When
That makes
when you
sense.
torque the motor up, it binds that linkage up on the column.
Oh, that makes sense. There you go. There's the first rational explanation I've ever heard of why.
I just saw a bazillion of them G bodies where you'd throw that sucker up in reverse by itself when you stood on it.
Tony, you aren't smoking again, are you? No, I quit. I actually quit like 2 years ago. I don't smoke anymore.
Hey guys, I have a 70 Buick GS with a built 455, 450 horsepower, 465 foot-pound torque. I have to put in a 12-bolt posi. What's the best gear that will complement the torque of the motor? I have a Turbo 400. Mr. Will, the go-to gear number for a Buick
Let me guess.
455,
Let me guess. 391.
342.
342?
That's the number, yeah. 2,500 stall and a 342 gear is the perfect combination for a 455 Buick. You know what? Cecil Gilbert asks a perfect question. How do you flush out a junkyard automatic transmission?
I've never specifically flushed one out.
I've taken them apart and cleaned them out.
I've done that.
He's trying to flush it. I'm assuming that he got it and stuck it in a car and he's wanting to flush it before he uses it.
Yeah, I mean, it's done commercially. It's done through the cooler, through the external cooler lines.
Yeah.
Because they have transmission flush devices, and it's done through the training cooler lines. Me myself, all I've ever really done is drop the pan. You know, when you drop the pan, you're automatically draining the fluid out of the pan, change the filter, and then after you run it, because there's no effective way to get the oil out of the converter. It has to be pumped through the system. So what I'll do is, let's just say it's a torque light. Let's say it's a 904. It's a gallon fill or a 4-quart fill with a full converter. So I'll drop the pan, change the filter, put the pan back up, put a gallon in it, run it for 20 minutes, a half hour, take it for a ride, and if the fluid still has any sort of burnt or odor to it, I'll do that process again. Because that's the only way to get that fluid out of the converter is to let the pump in the transmission pump it through.
I usually just drop the pan, clean all the internals out, and then the converter you can't do much with. Like you said, there's not a lot to do with that, right? You turn it upside down, dump all the fluid out. I usually pour 2 or 3 quarts back into it and then dump it out again. Because, I mean, if you think about it, a couple quarts of training fluid is pretty cheap.
Compared to
Yeah, junk going through the training. So, yeah, that's what I do.
Mercedes have drain plugs on their torque converter. Lots of manufacturers
Yeah.
used to have drain plugs on their converters.
And if you get an aftermarket converter, a lot of them already have a drain plug because they've been flushed. What it is they take a regular case torque converter and build what they want out of it, but they drill a hole in it so they can flush it themselves.
1960s Chrysler, actually torque flights have a drain plug. And that's one of the ways, a lot of people, okay, so, well, you're not familiar with them, right? But the flex plate will only go on one way, right? So it's got four points.
Okay.
And the flex plate is indexed off of the converter drain plug.
Oh, really?
So it's crazy. Okay, so here's like Mopar nonsensical trivia, all right? So the flex plate has, where it bolts to the crankshaft, you'll see one small hole. So 6 bolts bolt to the crankshaft, and there's going to be one small hole. Well, that index is opposite of the converter drain plug.
Oh, okay.
So what you do is when you line the motor up, you put it in the car, you rotate the motor so that the little hole is facing the top. And then when you put the transmission in, you make sure that the drain plug on the converter is facing the bottom. And then all of the lugs will line up.
Huh. Well, that's pretty cool. I didn't know that. I didn't know that Mopars look weird because everything's weird on them right there. The flex plate's just like a weird foot thing. Everything else has a flex plate. And it's just odd. I don't know. I've never been into the Mopar scene.
Let's see. Unity Motorsports, Andy says, I pulled the cooler line off and cranked the car to pump the fluid out and kept the new fluid in at the same time before it came out. Yeah, there's lots of ways to do that.
Already saying Dallas, I was initially asked backwards, but now I'm fascinated by Mopar.
Mopar is life, man.
Huh.
What are these guys talking about? Unity Motorsports?
I don't know. He's just replying to a question. It's something. Vinny LC is asking, how do converterless transmissions work? I've heard of a lot of guys running Power Glide Turbo 350 for sprint car racing with no torque converter. Oh, and clutch turbo.
Yeah.
Or clutch glide, or
they used to do it for drag racing, clutch flights.
Yeah.
Clutch turbos. They just replaced the converter with a clutch.
Yeah, and
they use a pump to run the hydraulics inside the transmission.
Yeah, so what you have virtually is like a dummy torque converter, really, but it's a clutch assembly, right, with a splined in on it that fits right in like a torque converter would, right? But a torque converter really is just a slipping clutch, but it's just it's a viscous clutch, right? Isn't that what they call it?
Yeah.
So instead of having that operation being done by the torque converter, you're just doing it by the clutch and manually controlling it yourself. But they're real simple.
I've seen that done 2 ways. One with a pump. I've seen people use external pumps.
Uh-huh.
And I've also seen them where they use a 3-finger device that attaches to the pump and will grab the fingers of the clutch.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And the fingers of the clutch spin that 3-finger deal?
Yep.
Huh.
It goes around the outside of the throw-up bearing. The throw-up bearing sits in the middle of it, and it's got 3 fingers. This has been years.
I've only seen one that has like a snout from a torque converter attached to, I want to say like the throw-up bearing, right? But I don't know. Maybe I'm so wrong about that. But I want to say it had a whole entire setup, just splines.
Well, I've seen them done with power steering pumps too.
Really?
Use a power steering pump to run the hydraulics.
I'm sure that would work fine because that's all it really is. See, I'm like, and these guys are talking about junkyard trannies and stuff like that. I'll give you like my 2 cents on this. Junkyard motors and trannies used to be my forte because when I was racing my Thunderbird and I had a 302, I mean, just like the LS guys do today, right? I would gack a 302 just by spraying the crap out of it until the crank fell out.
Right.
Go to the junkyard, find a wrecked Explorer. If you found one wrecked, guaranteed the motor probably works fine, right? Because it was going down the road to get wrecked generally. Sometimes they're hit, on the side of the road. Look where the accident occurred. If it doesn't make sense, The other one was you'd always pull the oil, smell it, look at it. Does it smell like it's been washed out? You would check for antifreeze in the water. I mean, there's this basic signs that you would look for that was almost an indicator. Same thing with trannies. Trannies is like, if it smells burnt, put the dipstick back in, go to the next one. If it don't even bother with trying to freshen it up or make it work, right? Just move on to the next.
Now I'm a little older in Dallas, right? So back when we would gack our big blocks, or 383 or 440 in Mopar, every junkyard back in the day had an engine pile.
Oh yeah,
Okay?
yeah.
So and then you could buy any engine off the pile for $25.
Oh,
Doesn't
that's
matter
awesome.
what it was, right?
Yeah.
So that's what we would do. We would go to engine pile, right? Find all of the easy to pick big blocks, pluck them off. $100 buys you 4 engines.
But the Hemis at the bottom of that pile.
So they would end up in there.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I've never seen a 426 in there, but I remember seeing very clearly.
392s.
Early Chrysler's in there. But yeah, you got 4 engines for $100, and you bring them home, you take them all apart, and as your hot rod 8 parts, you just fed them off that pile.
Oh.
When I was a kid, I didn't even know what a tachometer was. They used to shift at valve float.
Oh, really?
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Just
Oh, time for the next gear. Yeah.
Right.
It's not pulling anymore. I need another gear.
Right. That was our rev limiter. The valve float. So naturally, you blow up a lot of stuff that way. I was always into 4-speeds, always missing gears because that's just part of the 4-speed thing.
The 4-speed experience.
Yeah. So when you shifted valve float and miss a gear, goodbye. It's like it's done. Right, look at that sound of I got crack. Yeah, that's the sound. and then silence, right? Just silence as you coast to a stop. Brian Power, this is a good question. Any sources for good literature on building 2 chassis cars for beginner?
Oh.
That's an excellent question.
I say Amazon. You used to be able to buy books on there once upon a time, right? But I used to get a lot of books off of there that was drag racing specific. It depended on what kind of tube chassis you're wanting. You want to look for that kind of specific thing. But when I would get the drag racing books, they had how-to books on there all day long, and I used to get them on. What did I have on the ship? I had an iPad, which was like the first generation ones where you download the books from Amazon. I don't even know if you can download a book from Amazon anymore. That was probably 10 years ago.
I would if I was going to build a 2 chassis car from scratch, which I've done, but I built funny car style cars. If I was going to build a door slammer chassis from scratch, I think what I would do is because you don't want to you're not ready to reinvent the wheel if you just get started, right? You just need to find out what the status quo is and go from there. So I would say I would get my hands on the 3 things, right? The SFI spec for the chassis that you want to build. Okay, so let's just say you're going for a 25-1 cert, right, which is to 750 with a mild steel cage, right? So 25-1. So I would get the SFI spec for the 25 roll cage design, and that'll incorporate the entire tube chassis. Then I would get my hands on the instructions for one of the kits. Okay, so Alston makes a kit. There's a bunch of
chassis engineering used to make stuff.
Chassis engineering is great stuff, and you're going to end up buying a lot of trinkets. If you're building a 2 chassis car for your first time, you're going to end up buying a lot of trinkets from places like Chassis Engineering.
You're also going to need a lot of tools that you don't have, I'm sure. The angle finders and
I think that's the way I would go about it.
You know what? That's what we should do, Tony.
Build a tube chassis car.
But we build like an altered or a dragster, but do it just like they used to do in the '60s, right on the shop floor. Lay it on the shop floor, lay it out,
That's how I did it.
and weld it.
That's how I did it.
Maybe that's something that would be a real kick-ass following on there. So everybody's talking about the type of transmission fluid that they run in their cars. And, you know, the weirdest thing I've heard just about a year and a half ago.
S&W. That's a Bob.
S&W.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Bob Grencher. S&W. So they really good people. Actually, you can call them. They'll give you information. You know what I mean? Like if you're building your own car, you want to buy a couple of parts from them to stay on the good side. But yeah, absolutely. I used a lot of S&W stuff when I was doing this.
Jason's garage is saying, build a slingshot. We should build a slingshot on the garage floor. Just lay it out and start building. Are you up to that?
You want to buy the tubing?
I don't think it'd be too bad, right?
Yeah, I built. I mean, I know every.
Let's put the 215 in it with a clutch.
That could be kind of gay. If you're going to build a slingshot, it's going to have a.
Amy?
Yeah, it's going to have a.
Build a cannon. Well, no, I don't think I'll do that. Oh, all right. Unfinished Project is asking, what's the best way to get this peeling metal off of a plastic center cap? I don't know.
Yeah.
Danny Boy is asking, or he says, big block Buick power for our slingshot, our garage slingshot. I could do that. We have plenty of them.
If I built the slingshot, it would have to run on nitro. I mean, an injected car would be pretty cool.
Let's put a big block Buick in there. It's a Hemi killer for a reason, right?
Not on nitro.
No, it'd probably be the Buick killer that if we ran nitro on it.
You know, Andy Tony mixed up Boston look awesome in a front engine dragster. But I mean, you guys, I know those cars literally like the back of my hand. I can close my eye and I know all of the dimensions. I know all of the specifications. There's no problem. So you guys want to build the tubing? I'll build it.
Oh, that's a good idea. Peter Kovacs is saying, put the Roach GTX Hemi in that slingshot.
Well, that would be up to the owner of it. Dual slingshot. There was a guy named Keith Sissel that ran a pair of AMC inlines.
Oh, there was a slant one I saw. It had it injected. It was an injected slant.
Two of them?
Just one.
Oh, okay. Because Keith Sissel ran a pair of AMCs inline.
I don't know what the gain is on the inline. Is it just that it's center? All the way center?
They were just taking advantage of the classes. It was complemented.
Right, but I was just trying to think of what would be the advantage of the inline. A Turbo Clifford 300. Man.
Sue Love, GSX were not Hemi killers, biggest lie ever. Sue, have you ever driven a stock 455 Buick, like a stage one motor? I have. Have you ever driven a stock street Hemi, a 426 Hemi? I have. There is absolutely no comparison whatsoever. The 455 will gap that street Hemi 100 feet out. The Hemi has to work super hard on the top end to get around it. Stock for stock, right? I'm talking showroom stock for showroom stock. Yeah, the Hemi is absolutely, or the Buick is absolutely a Hemi car.
This must say I'm building 2 slingshots.
Yeah, there's a whole fleet of slingshots.
Why don't we start building slingshot to Uncle Slingshot's garage?
Probably get a lot of
a lot of views.
Yeah.
Well, you got to admit, there's a kind of a uniqueness with the 215 only weighing 320 pounds in a slingshot. We could have a 1,100-pound dragster.
Well, Kyler Penley saying she's picking up a 68 Riviera for the husband. He's planning on putting your knowledge to rebuilding work from the ground up for a daily. Those are such beautiful cars.
68 Rivy. Yeah, that's when they still look good.
Yeah, that's like the height of class. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. And that's when they still had the shorter wheelbase. There was each one of those generations of Rivieras has something that just is so unique. 63 to 65. Well, it was the first ones, but damn, the headlights on that 65 look great.
Unfinished project wants to know what's a slingshot. You know, see, that's the thing. We're old, so to us, this is a slingshot is a front engine dragster, and they call them a slingshot because of the driver's position, which is behind the car. In the early days, they used the driver as a bob weight, right? Literally,
That's what it was.
They used the driver as a bob weight, and the driver used to sit way back and way low. And then as the cars got faster, they moved the driver closer and closer and closer until like the last generation of slingshot dragsters, the driver literally sat on top of the rear end.
Yeah.
You see, those are the cars where the driver's head is actually above the injector of the car. Kyla says two-door, they're pretty cars. They're beyond pretty. Those things are gorgeous.
Yeah, those good looking cars. I really like, my favorite one is the boat tail. And I really want to do one, like I want to take the back window out of one and put it on like a 63 Buick Special and make it look like those Novas that were the fastback Novas that they used in drag racing for a couple of years.
Danny Boyd says differential under your nuts.
Yeah.
I had a Woody Gilmore Flexi Flyer, 1967 Flexi Flyer, and on that thing, when I was seated in the car, because when you sit in the slingshot, you're in the earlier slingshots, the seat is under the rear end, so your legs go over the top of the rear end, and the ring gear is like literally like less than 6 inches from your nuts when you're sitting in the car. And my car had an Olds Pontiac rear in it. And I actually, it was the last car Woody Gilmore built with an Olds Pontiac rear in late 1966. It was 67 foot. And my car actually had a metal strap. It was a chrome Olds Pontiac rear housing with a metal strap, about a 3-inch wide metal strap that ran around where the ring gear was.
So you didn't lose your nuts.
So yeah, so if it did come apart, you know.
It just blew your legs off at the socket. But so John W. Jr. He's talking about building a big block Buick 455. It kind of altered, but then he's asking, is there a good rule of thumb on maximum bore taper, or are there too many variables?
There should be no bore taper. I mean, that's one of the reasons why you would bring the engine to the machine shop and have a board, because that's eliminating any bore taper. Any bore taper is bad, and it only goes from bad to worse. So when you say you know what's an acceptable amount of bore taper, there really is no acceptable amount of bore taper. Yeah. The Dragmaster had a slant 6.
I just figured, I saw it was injected, so I knew it had to be from like the 60s most likely, because Hilborn didn't make, you couldn't even get the stuff Hilborn made back in the 60s, in the 90s, right? Yeah. Like they had cut it down so much to where it was virtually just what, like small block Chevrolet, small block Ford, big block Dodge. But there was so much neat stuff that they made back then.
The problem, I did a whole video on bore taper. I think it's called the home engine builder's #1 mistake, I believe it was. Right? Don't quote me on that, but I did a whole video on bore taper. The problem with bore taper, okay? So let's just say you got 3/1000 of an inch at the top and 1/1000 of an inch at the bottom, okay, of the stroke. What happened is, as the pistons go up and down, the rings are expanding and contracting to meet the taper, okay? And at lower RPM, let's say 2,000 RPM, 3,000 RPM, those rings will keep up. They'll expand and contract to go along with the taper. But as you get into the higher RPM, the ring can no longer expand and contract that, and so it'll start to ride above like a film of oil, and your compression just falls right on the map.
Yeah, I was gonna say they used to. Well, I thought it used to be called like ring flutter when the ring started shaking.
Ring flutter happens at the top and the bottom
of the bore.
Okay. Right? So what'll happen is the ring will be set coming up. Then when it goes to reverse rotation, if there's too much clearance in the ring land,
Uh-huh.
the ring will actually waffle itself. And
Right.
if it waffles itself, it'll do
Flutter.
that whole, yeah.
Well, then your compression plummets then too.
Yeah. Lots of things will plummet compression. But bore taper is the biggest reason why you'll see. I see this all the time. You'll get guys that will buy. Okay, so they'll have basically a block. Okay, I put a cam in it. They do the heads. They do the intake manifold. They do the headers. And they buy all good stuff and they do it all the right way. But suddenly the motor actually makes less power than it did when it had all of the stock components on it. That's because you're raising the power level of the engine. You're raising the operating RPM of the engine, and at that point, the rings can't keep up with the bore taper. And it just falls off its face. So while this thing should be making, on paper, it should be making 500 horsepower, it makes 200 horsepower.
No.
It'll make more power at 3,000 RPM than it will at 5,000 RPM.
So John W. Jr. says mine was it was less than 11 10,000ths. Is that right? Yeah. 11 10,000ths, but told that was really bad. Agree,
Well,
1.0, but
1.1 thousandths is not
that's
bad.
that's probably factory acceptable, to be honest with you.
That's I'll tell you what, if you that's approximately the difference between an engine that's been deck plate honed and one that hasn't been deck plate honed. It's probably about that much bore taper towards the top of the stroke. So I wouldn't worry about that.
No, I would definitely just ring that sucker and have at it. All turds are tapered.
Oh, John Wilbert says the weird hour of comments is upon us. And he's right. It's the last half hour of the show.
Yeah, so now all the trolls are going to start dumping all their trash.
We don't have any trolls because we have the greatest mods in the history of the internet.
Yeah, well, that's true. And your greatest troll's retired now. He's cashed in his chips. He's bought the farm.
I actually feel bad about that. I feel bad about that. I hope he just got tired of it, and it's not that that he had to for any particular reason. I was honored by the fact that I had a guy that actually did a whole channel devoted to me.
On the hating on you.
Yeah.
Well, so BDan1324 says, I've noticed EFI engines seem to have way less bore wear. So when I find core engines to build, I use newer stuff from the junkyard, like Chevrolet Vortec engines, and machine work costs big money in my area. There's twofold on that. That I know of.
Yeah.
One, the air fuel ratio is constantly adjusted, so you don't have like washing out of the cylinders like you do when you got a bad pull off on your carburetor, right? For the choke pull off. That's probably like the most neglected thing on a damn carburetor is a choke pull off, right? Two is all of the metal from about 1983 on up. Everybody realized that high nickel block was a smart thing to do, right? So like your Ford small blocks, they all went high nickel, and they stopped having a lot of bore wear, But I'm sure the Chevrolet was the same way.
When they went to EFI at about the same time, they went to low tension ring packs.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah. So the older engines had cast rings. The older engines had to operate under really adverse conditions, and so you had these thick cast rings. As the engines evolved, when EFI came in, they started going to a lower tension ring pack, and they started using stainless rings and all this other stuff, and that tears up the cylinder walls much less. So it's not.
Plus, the oils got better too, right? And there's a lot of stuff.
Things got better, right?
Yeah.
So it's not that EFI makes the bore not wear. It's the construction of those engines that makes the bore not wear. MK Ultra. What about MK Ultra?
I don't know what that is.
You probably don't want to know. Oh, the guy's name is MK Ultra. Okay.
Oh! Is our cameraman falling asleep
That's
again?
Because I said MK Ultra, and now, yeah.
If you guys have been drinking during this show, this is about to get really awesome for you, because you're probably about to lose your lunch. Oh, she's falling down now.
Is it?
Yeah, well, I don't know why. We're gonna have to do something
because I said MK Ultra, and now they're trying to put us out.
I don't even know what that is.
You don't want to know.
Is that better?
You don't want to go down that rabbit hole.
Better?
Yeah, that's fine. That's good.
Yeah, our cameraman's falling out. He's had one too many already.
Kurt Tank, Uncle Tony, I'm planning to put Torco oil in my 390 FE motor. Go you.
Does anybody know if Brad Penn, are they still around? I've heard bad things that they might be gone.
Olive says to see the men who stare at goats for dramatization of urban legends. Olive, that is not, and I repeat, is not an urban legend. I'm telling you that flat out. Don't want to look into Operation Northwoods either. Yeah, well, that's all part of that same rabbit hole. Oh yeah, I've seen the movie. It actually was a good movie. It's one of the few that I sat through and I watched and I enjoyed it.
Frank Caputo, that's right. It was the old Kindle Oil. I've heard bad things that they might be gone.
Joe Gibbs Racing makes hoity-toity race oil. Yeah, they have for a long time. And it's just that, man. It's hoity-toity race oil.
Well, they're showing Brad Penn in Competition Products catalog. Yeah, but I've seen that it's hard to get. It's hard to get Brad Penn right now for some reason. Did somebody say "F me"? All right.
What?
I don't know.
New City Carpets, Dallas. I've been running 65 nail heads with a few buddies for 40 years. Still have an original 65 GS Revio. Ooh.
Oh, that's cool.
Ooh.
That's a good looking car. I love the 65
That's
Revio.
a dual quad one, right?
Yeah. Dual quad. Actually had the stacked headlights instead of the side by side. Oh, it's so good looking. Where do you source a decent set of points? Wheel King 71.
The Eklund brand that Napa sells is good, but I have a set of those points at the shop that I have to do a video on because there's a problem even with those. I just found this a couple of days ago on one of my friend's cars. He brought it by, so I got to do a video on that.
So Vinny LC is saying, whatever happened to those 70s race haulers? They were so cool. These modern enclosed race warehouses they have now are not appealing. I agree. And I think, all right, so I was talking about having a race like a year ago. Well, not have the race a year ago, but I was talking about a year ago. Have a race where you get, like, say it's $100 entry fee. It'd be $90 if you show up with an open trailer, or is $80 if you show up with an open trailer. So that way, see, when the car's going down the interstate on an open trailer or on the back of a truck, it's like a moving billboard to follow me to the drag strip, right?
No, I agree. Hey, we ran the top of the drag strip before.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Did you ever see the one where it was a rear engine, where it had it going over the top of the truck? That was you guys?
That was us.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's cool.
That was us. Rob's Classic, it's beginning to look like it might pay to get stock up on NOS parts. Yes, it is.
Go find them.
Wheelie King 71, challenge her and her man are building an old hauler. It's awesome. I love those things.
I always wanted to do one, but it's just so expensive to. I mean, you got to find a truck, then you got to restore it, then you got to change the bed out, right? So, or lengthen the frame and all that stuff. I mean, if I did one, I'd want to do it like, the haulers that they had, like Prudhomme and Tom Mongoose. We had.
Yeah, I didn't like those.
No, one with the toolbox and stuff on it.
They weren't practical. They weren't really practical.
Oh, why is that?
Because of the way the car was up high in there. See, like the ramp trucks that everybody else was using, right? Very practical. But because the car is easy to get on and off. You can use the front.
Oh, you're talking about the yellow and the red one where they were really high and they sat almost flat to where you had you couldn't get anything on without big long ramps.
Right. I know somebody, Prudhomme restored his,
Uh-huh.
and somebody else restored McEwen's.
It might have been Prudhomme, did
Might
both
have
of
been
them.
Prudhomme, yeah. Vinny OC, thank you, sir. I appreciate that. He just threw in a random 1999. Thank you, sir.
You ain't gonna put a 200 grand car on a utility trailer. Well, that's true,
I would.
but
I would.
yeah, TV Tommy always had the coolest car haulers. I like the one that was through, where you could see the car inside the hauler.
That was the one where we had two cars inside the hall.
Had a vet in there.
And a vet on the roof.
Oh, vet on the roof?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. It was cool. PIE cylinder heads are thumbs down. I don't even know what that is.
I have no idea.
Oh, is Challenge Her? Is that girl that used to write for Hot Rod Magazine?
I have no idea.
I can't remember what her name was. They did have a Dick Landy truck that they were restoring. Her boyfriend did.
Los Cadaver says he put his 15 grand slot racer on a $1,200 utility trailer every month. No, we hauled around. We had an old Ford Ram truck, and it was probably with Lagana, and we hauled the dragster around on that.
The 1965 New City Carpet. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you. The 65 GS Riviera was ordered Tony D style, no air, manuals, windows, and a total strip. A dealer in Nyack, New York, or required extra deposit on order.
Oh, because he got rid of everything power that would have came on the Riviera.
Yeah, nobody else would want it.
Right. But Steve, the Riviera was still at that time would have been a mid-sized car. Right? It wasn't a big Luxo boat. I mean, it was a luxury. You could get them loaded. But, man, it was, what did they call it? The gentleman's hot rod? Yeah. Is that what it was?
We had the first one of those I saw. I was fresh out of, I had just gotten thrown out of high school, and I was working in a place called Eddie's Amico on Highland Boulevard in Staten Island. I was 16, and I was working as a mechanic there, and I also pumped gas. I was the gopher. I was the kid. So a woman pulled up in one of those Buicks and checked the oil, because that was the normal thing. You pump the oil, you pump the gas, and they ask you if you check the oil. So I opened the hood, and I see this big chrome air cleaner. And I'm like, And I looked underneath the side, and I see two dual quiet, 2 4-barrels. Like, oh! It was like the most amazing thing. I was 16, and but it was just a regular everyday.
Oh, and they had see, and that's the years that they had all the good stuff on them. If you had the Riviera, you had the aluminum valve covers that were stamped Buick or cast Buick, right? Oh man, and that thing would have looked so mean. But see, in 65, he's got a 65. So the 65, 425, 2 4-barrels, right? It would have came with a turbo 400, but that would have been switch pitch.
Yep.
And it would have had that 9 3/8 inch rear end, and you could get all kinds of gears for them.
Dark Star says, why would anybody want to strip down Riviera and get a special? Because you couldn't get that engine in a special. It was Riviera only.
Only Riviera.
AG Renville, UT, why does the electric fuel pump keep tripping circuit breaker? Also, which is better, circuit breaker or relay? So I don't use relays on anything, but that's not the right way to do it. That's my way to do it. Okay, I recommend you use a relay. Me, on the other hand, I don't use them under any circumstances. Do I use a relay unless it's a stock car with the stock ignition system or stock starting system, like Chrysler to start a relay. But I'm not a relay guy. I hardwire everything directly. So you're asking the one guy, Dallas?
If it's tripping the circuit breaker on an electric fuel pump, your fuel pump is probably bad, or you have underrated your circuit breaker. Like say if it's not a factory circuit breaker and you put it in there, it's pulling more of a load than what your circuit breaker is rated.
How many amps would you expect, like, let's say, like a blue pump to pull?
I would say I would at least probably have a 25 amp fuse in it if I put a fuse in there. But I don't know what kind of amperage that they do pull, because it isn't all based on load, right? So I don't honestly know. Yeah, but you definitely need to put either a larger circuit breaker in there or start checking out the pump for it failing.
Short or bad ground will trip it too. Yep. Well, yeah, that's kind of obvious.
Performance injection equipment. I have their
Never
heads,
heard of
freeze
it.
plugs, not installed correct. Oh, well, you know what? I've never heard of them, and I don't know who would name their company Pi.
All valves leak.
But
Finishes
it
sloppy
sounds
with
like it's
tuners
Chinese.
on the sides.
Are they-
$1,600 for a set of cast iron heads.
Oh, you got ripped off.
Yeah, bro, you got. Shoot.
Cast iron? What is it for? It better be some crazy ass set of heads that you can't get
Yeah, it's
anywhere
got to be
else.
something you can't get anywhere else. Wild Rose Garage is saying most cheap electric pumps are junk. All China had good luck with Edelbrock pumps. I don't use the car, but I put one of them Edelbrock. I put a Carter in my '68 Roadrunner. I
Oh,
guess it was about 6 months ago. I haven't used the car, but the original Hemi pump that I had in there dropped dead, and I was tired of the paper lock thing when they did take the car out. So I bought a new Carter 50-gallon per hour pump, and it's Chinese. It's Chinese. It's in there right now temporarily until I can find an old school Carter to put in its place. But yeah, they're junk.
so Bumpstick saying it is Chinese for 360 Magnum. It's $1,600
Jeez,
bucks.
why didn't you just go get a set of 360 Magnum heads?
I wonder if these are some crazy set of heads.
Oh, I don't know.
Well, I don't know. I try to stay away from anything Chinese. I really do. That's just my personal opinion. I've never got anything good. When I find out it's Chinese, it's like, oh, that's crap,
Food.
you know. Well, okay, Chinese takeout is different.
No, I've come across some Chinese stuff that's good. The Chicago Electric stuff. Some of it's hit and miss, right? But I found some of it's really good. It's so cheap that you don't really care.
Well, and that's
if
that. If you're talking about Harbor Freight tools,
Yeah.
there's tools that I bought from there that it's like, well, I'm going to use this one time, and I know I'm going to only use it one time. So as long as it performs the one time, I'm okay with the $30, right? But when it's talking about race car parts,
Oh no,
F
no,
China, you know, like they can't make crap. All right. So if you want to see something really sad, if you got Facebook, get on Facebook and look at Speedmaster 351 Windsor block. There was a block picture running around where the mains were cast, like you could pick it up and look at the block until it was fucked, right? I mean, it's like it was that bad. The mains were like the whole entire, I want to say probably at the foundry, they must have bumped the casting when they were pouring them. And it's like, it's off by inches.
But you know, here's the thing, okay? And I got to say this in defense of the Chinese, okay? The Chinese are fully capable of making extremely high quality stuff. There's not the problem with the stuff that we get here that's from China is American companies buying from the lowest bidder.
Right. That's exactly what's wrong with it.
Right.
So
I mean, to just label things as, oh, it's Chinese, it's junk. I don't buy that, because the Chinese are just as capable, and in their home market for their own stuff, they build stuff as good as anybody else anywhere in the world. Okay, but the stuff that we get here that's American companies, you know, American corporations ordering through the lowest bidder, and that's what we get here. So it's not, don't just like write off the Chinese as, oh, they build junk. No, we get junk here. So when you get a fucking
and they got your money for a piece of junk.
right, you know, you buy something that's got an American name on it, but the stuff is made in China, you know it's junk. So that's
Well, so here's how I look at it, and this is just my take. And this was after 23 years of being in the Navy, right? Everything that I ever seen those guys make, they took the technology and applied it to military stuff, right? So they took metallurgy and applied it to military so that they could, that was the first thing they applied it to. Then they took it and made it whatever part you wanted. You wanted a scat crank because they're made in China,
right.
right? They used the metallurgy to figure out how to make a decent crank, right? Well, if you have noticed, those cranks are just cast there. Then they're machined in the States because that's the only place that somebody's going to do it worth a crap. The biggest problem is those people work for free, right? And when you are an American company that's supposed to be about capitalism, and you go overseas and you make this stuff for virtually free because they don't have a choice, right? They either go to work or grandma gets shot in the face. That's how that works. And so it's supporting what is all unholy.
Many you'll see saying that's not necessarily true because their raw materials like the tube steel they send for chassis work is much inferior than American deal. But that's because that's what's being ordered. You don't think that the Chinese are capable of making a high quality steel? You don't think they're capable of making a high quality chromoly? You know, I mean, they're capable of it, but the buyers here aren't ordering that. They're saying, how much can you give me this many feet of metal for? And the Chinese aren't stupid.
And this is what we're going to pay you,
right.
What you pay for.
The Chinese aren't stupid. They're like, yes, you know, round by wants junk, we'll send them junk. That's what it comes down to. They are fully capable of making extremely high quality stuff. They just don't send it here because we're not willing to pay for it.
Yeah, that's the thing. People aren't willing to pay for it. Joseph Atkins asked, do aluminum heads overheat a cast iron block? No. Matter of fact, it's the opposite.
It's the opposite. John W. Jr. says, our government helped a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah, I agree with that 100%. The thing I always look at is like, this is why I try to stick to, when I do a Buick big block, I try to stick to as many of the factory parts as I possibly can, including the bolts.
Yeah,
right?
That's how I am.
And I haven't had many problems yet. I had a bent crank in my 455 in my Suburban, but it bent and didn't break. So I guess it's a plus.
Bumpstick. American companies specifically specify what they want. When I order from China, I specify what I wanted and they put it to detail. They do great, but have a bad rap from the American greed. And you're right. You're absolutely right. That's why I hate that blanket thing. Chinese stuff is junk. I hate that blanket statement because there are anywhere in the world, man. You know, there are the Chinese equivalent of us sitting there right now doing their thing. There's the Russian equivalent of us sitting there doing their thing right now. You know, so to just make that blanket statement that all Chinese stuff is junk is like terribly wrong. You know, it's the Chinese stuff that we get here. That's what's wrong.
So Danny Boyd's asking why the crank bent. I'm pretty certain it was bent when I got it. The motor had a bent rod in it, and against all, I guess, my own spider senses going off, I reused the crank. And it was out of a core motor, and I thought, well, how bad can it be? It doesn't look scored or anything, so I'll just put it in there. Well, apparently, and then it's knocked since I started it up. And then when I took it out this, 4 weeks ago, you came and looked at the bearings, and it was like the weirdest looking pattern I've ever seen on
We should have done a video on that, but we were crunching.
Well, I still got the block over there.
All right, then we'll do a video on that for sure. Unfinished project. Tony, you think you might do an all-wheel drive project? It's very interesting you say that, you asked that, because once I've caught up on everything we've got going on right now, I plan on doing some Jeep stuff, and I've got this thing for XJs. So not this year, right? Definitely not this year. Maybe not until the later half of next year. Almost definitely the year after. I plan on doing a turbocharged 4-liter. Turbocharged with nitrous, 4-liter, 4-wheel drive XJ for drag racing. But that's not something. Don't ask me about that now for the next year, because I'm planning for down the road.
That's the horizon right now.
Down the road, right? Yeah. So, but I've already started gathering little bits and filling my my head with the information that I want to have there, and I've got a lot of contemplating to do with it, and all this other stuff. But yes, there is definitely a turbocharged 4-liter Jeep all-wheel drive project coming.
You know what I always wanted to do in that kind of regard? You know the Trailblazers, like the junky Trailblazers they came out with in like the mid 2000s. They all have that 60-degree V6 bell housing on them.
Right.
Right. And that's what, to hook up to that Atlas 4.2 motor, that's what it had. But there was some of those that came all-wheel drive. And then you got the Colorado and Canyon truck, which is the same platform. So you put the all-wheel drive transmission with a 3.8 Buick and a turbo on it and make an all-wheel drive Canyon truck. That thing would be just turbocharged Buick V6.
That would be good, but I have to stick with the.
Oh, I know.
You know what I'm saying?
That's the same. That's what I always wanted to do. Oh well, Fubar just put up my AHRA link again. Go there and buy some decals and get. We got buy one get one free, and we also got posters, buy one get one free. Got some T-shirts. Some. I think that's just about it. I'm just about out of. Sold my hats like in minutes.
So food bar. So you got the stuff.
What's that?
You got new merch coming?
I do. The problem, the hats you can't get. I can't buy them. They're all sold out.
Who sold out?
The hats. You can't get the hats that I had.
Yeah,
I got to
sorry,
find
my
a.
guy?
I need to find a. No, it doesn't matter. They're just not being manufactured.
I bet you my guy can get them.
Okay.
I'll talk to him tomorrow. Just remind me. Okay, so yeah, Steve Fitzroy, man, it's been a quick 2 hours.
It went by fast.
Right. You're right. And I would go for another hour. So I can't. I still got things I got to get done before the end of the night. So, what were we going to say here? Oh, so thank you to our mods, John, Ari, Fubar, Zero, the greatest mods in the history of the internet. AHRAonline.com. And we're working on the AHRA Drag Racing History channel. It'll be up. We have a lot of stuff going on.
We actually have the studios done.
The studio's done, yeah.
We have material that topics we want to cover. We just need to finish it up and start hitting it out of the park.
Yeah. So everybody contributed through Super Chat. Thank you so much. Keeps the wheels turning. That's how we keep everything going here. Everybody contributed to just conversation. Thank you all so much. We have the best community, okay, on YouTube.
Yeah.
We have the best community on YouTube. I really look forward to it. You know what I'm saying? It's
I look forward to the Wednesdays. There's so much fun.
I gotta be honest with you. Like I always start off because this is always at the end of the day. It's either on Wednesday or it's Sunday, right? And then like in the afternoon, like 5, 6 o'clock, I'm like, oh God, I could do another 2 hours tonight, right? But as soon as we get going here with you guys, I'm like, yeah, let's do this. This is fun, right? So thank you for being the awesome community that you are. I mean, from my heart, I really appreciate that. And I'm sure Dallas feels the same way.
I do. I absolutely love doing these things on Wednesday night. I look forward to them.
So, all right, guys, we're out of here. Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. Thank you all. And I'll see you Sunday night for our regular Sunday Night Live. I think we're going to be in Carlisle on Friday for an hour or two, or Saturday for an hour or two. Not for very long. But John, I'll give you a call tomorrow and we'll figure that one out. And then, and that's it. That's it, guys. I'm out of here. We're out of here.
Yeah. See you next week.
See you next week.